I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Melanie Deziel.
Proof is one of those things, especially in this day and age. Like, I could quote stats all day, but, all the data points to the fact that we as just humans have never been more skeptical. It's harder than ever to know what's real, what's trustworthy, who we can trust our information with. And so being able to back up all of the marketing and sales claims that you're making has, honestly never been more important. We've got to win folks over because they don't know who to trust. They don't know what to believe.
Melanie Deziel is a keynote speaker and award-winning branded content creator who is passionate about helping individuals, teams, and organizations unlock their creative potential and organize their creative efforts. She is the co-founder of the Creator Kitchen Mastermind for Creatives and the author of both the Content Fuel Framework, How to Generate Unlimited Story Ideas, and Prove It, exactly how modern marketers earn trust. My interview with Melanie Deziel is coming right up. But first,
Maruchan superfans are everywhere. From the busy moms who want to deliver maximum flavor in a flash to dorm room diners who want to put some slurp in their step. There are a ton of copycats you could use, but if you want to bless your bowl, there's only one true Maruchan. Whether you choose instant lunch, ramen bowls, yakisoba, or restaurant quality gold, Maruchan is the only ramen worth obsessing over. Smiles for all. Maruchan. See what all the ramen hype is about at maruchan.com.
You probably know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? I'm Jason Falls, and I host Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast. Now, you'll note I didn't say influencer marketing. I said influence marketing. Why? Because the goal is to truly influence an audience to take action. We talk about the strategies and stories that move beyond engaging just social media influencers and tap into your community to find influential voices. It's a different way of looking at it. We call it community commerce marketing. Influencers are still a piece of it, but there's so much more. I talk to creators, brand and agency side marketers, and the thinkers in the space to help grow your business. Come learn with me on Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast. Find it at winfluencepod.com, marketingpodcasts.net, or search for Winfluence wherever you get your podcasts.
Melanie Deziel, welcome back to On Brand.
It's good to be back. It's been quite a while.
It has been. Yeah, I will have to go dig this up, but it has been years. It's been a minute.
It really has.
So I love metaphors and I love cooking. Talk to me about why being a creator makes one think of the kitchen.
Well, this is, I am also a fan of a big metaphor. My co-founder of the kitchen, Jay, is also a fan of metaphor. So we just take it to the ends of the earth, probably to a point where we should relax a little bit. But I think it's true in a lot of ways that there's parallels there, in part because in the same way that there are tools and tactics and, things that we can all use, but our creations are very different. It reminds us of the way that, chefs may follow recipes. There may only be so many meal combinations. And yet, based on your personal experience, the way you approach the process, your life experience, the content that you put out is special. It's different. And in a lot of ways, I feel like there's this dichotomy, too, of sort of the line cooks who their job, in a fast food environment, for example, or fast casual is to just pump stuff out as fast as possible. And then you also have this class of, more like the Michelin star chefs who are focused on putting out a lot fewer pieces, but usually with a higher impact or a lot more care and attention. And I think we have that split in the creator world as well.
I love that. And, that line cook metaphor, I think, is especially effective there as well. And, you are all about, generating story ideas. And I kind of feel like with being a content creator today, that is what it's like. So how do we keep that menu going, if I can beat the metaphor to death?
Let's do it. Challenge accepted. Love it. I think it's really challenging right now in the creative space, in large part because I feel like so many people are in a panic about AI and what that does to the creative process, because there's so many tools that in some way are a great asset, right? They're helping us to, for example, like do research faster, or using AI to pressure test your ideas or ask what's missing from an outline, for example. Lots of ways that it can be helpful. But I think there's also a lot of people who see the potential for it to replace some of the work that we're doing. And that's always scary. I think the way you can kind of take a half step out of that line cook setup and try to find ways to stand out a little bit, a lot of it just comes down to leaning into what makes you you. And that sounds, really cliche, like be yourself, be authentic. But but what I actually mean is that there's a lot of general purpose content out there that anyone could create, right? 5 things marketers need to know, 6
Yeah.
ways to improve your XYZ, right? Like that stuff can be done by anyone and often is done by everyone. So the way you stand out is by leaning into those unique experiences that you've had, the the hobbies and interests that you have in your life that, maybe there's like with cooking, that there's an analogy to be made there or a metaphor you can use, leaning into your unique voice so that instead of 5 things marketers need to know, it's, the 2 surprising things I learned from chicken farming that have informed the way I run Facebook ad campaigns. I don't know what that could be. I'm making that up, but there's got to be lessons in there somewhere, and I think
There's a chicken farmer marketer out there that's hopefully listening to this, and we have delivered to that audience of one.
absolutely. Yeah. But I think we all have those things, right? Like it's your hobbies that you do outside of work that inform sort of your lens on the world. It's your family situation, the way that I approach something as a mom with a toddler it genuinely might impact the way that I approach something and how I might do that if I had no kids or if I had 6 kids, or if your kids are older and you're looking at parenting in a different way. It kind of changes the way you think about things, the way you evaluate things. So I think there's just so many ways we could bring more of ourselves, our worldview and our experiences into the work we create so that it's not just this templatized thing that, any of your competition or, worst case, a robot could replicate.
Well, you brought it up, but as you think about creating content, are there any metaphors that come to the forefront with parenting and content creation?
Oh my goodness, so many, and not all of them, not all of them probably appropriate for broader conversation. But
Sure.
one of the things that I talk about a lot is that, and hopefully this is not insulting to audiences everywhere, but many times I say that the things we want our audience to know are not the same things that they think they want, right?
Mm.
They have this idea of what it is that they want, but we know they need something deeper or something more complex or something more nuanced. And so I call it the veggie chicken nugget scenario, which is
Oh.
that my toddler always want every meal chicken nuggets is all we want is chicken nuggets, but I know she needs vegetables if she's ever going to grow. And so I have found these magical air quote chicken nuggets that are actually mixed in with vegetables, right? So I've found a way to appeal to the thing that she wants, that she believes is what she actually wants. But I've found a way to delicately infuse that with the things that I also know she needs. And it kind of speaks to the way that you might have to perhaps have a headline that's a little bit clickbaitier than you might like because that's what's getting people in the door. But that's how you then go and deliver the incredible value that they might not have clicked on if it were at face value, but it's going to be incredibly valuable to them once they get in the door.
I love that. And I love the chicken nugget angle. Everybody's got their thing. When I'm talking about infusing the information that you're trying to convey with story, I often make the comparison of it's the cheese that we have to put on the vegetables so that
Mm,
our kids will eat them. So I love
it's
I
all
love the chicken.
vegetables.
Yeah, yeah.
I also make an analogy about thinking about proof and evidence as seasoning. My second book, Prove It, was about, really how to use content as evidence of the various claims that you're making. And the question comes up oftentimes where folks are like, well, where should I put it? What should I not? That's my analogy. Coming back to the cooking is like, you just got to season it. It's like sprinkles. You put it on anything and it makes it that much more delicious,
Oh, this is great. You really do love a metaphor. You weren't fooling around,
Oh, no.
because I feel like it's in the name of the mastermind. It's weaving its way into the books. I love the idea of proof as seasoning. So it's almost, and it's not just like a seasoning, because sometimes we're into cooking metaphors this show. I sometimes compare certain things, like very specific, and technically when you're writing like exclamation points, I always say it's like coriander. You want like a
Yeah.
dash of that, but too much of it is not a good thing. But it almost sounds like you're saying that proof is some great all-purpose seasoning, like
Salt.
salt. Yeah, okay, there we
Right, like
go.
salt amplifies the flavor, right? Makes, I don't know, we're going deep here, but
I love it. I love it.
yeah. Well, and I think, uh, I guess, I don't know. There's probably something about high cholesterol in here that someone's going to have an objection to. I can see it already, but
We're gonna get canceled because of the dietary recommendations
oh God,
on the podcast.
oh my God. But yeah, no, it's proof is one of those things, especially in this day and age. Like, I could quote stats all day, but all the data points to the fact that we as just humans have never been more skeptical. It's harder than ever to know what's real, what's trustworthy, who we can trust our information with. And so being able to back up all of the marketing and sales claims that you're making has, like, honestly never been more important. Like, we've got to win folks over because they don't know who to trust. They don't know what to believe. And so, yeah, I mean, sprinkling some salt around, kind of amplify the things that already taste great. I think there's something there.
So, is there anything in that last challenge that you just talked through? Because that certainly was something that, as you were saying, I thought, oh gosh, that is a problem of the time, of just people believing things. So, is there? I will stop with the metaphor, but is there what type of salt do we need? Because there is so much information out there. What works the best if we do want customers to trust what we're saying?
Yeah. Well, you said you were going to stop with the metaphor, but that doesn't mean I have to, because
Okay.
surprise, surprise, I got another one. So when we talk about proof, I like to have folks think of themselves, even just momentarily, as a lawyer. Like, think to whatever courtroom drama you like to watch, or whatever CSI, three-letter acronym, crime show you're into, and they always talk about the same different kinds of evidence that we can kind of use with our marketing. So the first one is always corroboration, right? Who can back this up? Who else can say what we're saying? Who else can agree or, share their expert perspective that makes our perspective more credible, right? So looking for witnesses and experts like they do on TV, to back up the claims that you're making. This could be customer testimonials. It could be, expert influencers who are agreeing with you. It's really just saying, you acknowledge that just because I say something, that is not enough. And I need to find other people to say the same thing to help build my credibility. So that's one. Again, you can sprinkle that anywhere just by adding in quotes from folks who your audience trusts. So corroboration is a big one. The next one is documentation. So we want to kind of show things live. That's like using stories or, demonstrating things for our audience. It's like letting them see it with their own eyes in some way, the way you might with, like, here's the video evidence, right? Or here's the photos from the scene. What's the version of that you can do for your company to let people see it with their own eyes? So I like to think of demonstration as like the infomercial approach, right? You watch an infomercial for a product and they never just tell you that it works, right? Like, they are going to show you. If they are telling you this mop absorbs 5 times more water, you can bet there's going to be 2 buckets of water and you're going to get to see with your own eyes how much water it absorbs, right? So obviously, maybe the black and white dramatic reenactments of things going wrong is not the approach we take with our marketing, but taking that lesson of, like, how could we show our audience that our product is really easy to use instead of just saying it's easy to use? How could we say it's fast to set up? Well, why don't we do a side-by-side screen share that shows setting our product up versus setting up the competitor product? What is the way that we can let them see this truth with their own eyes? So that demonstration is really, really key.
On Brand will be right back after this.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
You may know you are listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Izzy House hosts a great podcast called the Space Marketing Podcast. Izzy, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
Space Marketing Podcast is where we explore marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. I talk space with some very interesting industry professionals about their challenges and successes with marketing in the new commercial space economy. This show is for business leadership, entrepreneurs, and the space curious.
Wow. And where in the universe can people subscribe?
All of the major channels, and you can also find it on MPN and spacemarketingpodcast.com.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Now, back to the show. I want to come back to something that you said earlier when we were talking about, kind of the AI panic. And I love the what makes you you. And I feel like that would be something that folks would listen to and say, yes, that's the answer.
Yeah.
But then the follow-up thought that is equally terrifying is, what does make me me? Is there an exercise? Because I would imagine that a lot of people that don't maybe think in those terms a lot, it's kind of like that. I'm back to metaphors. You went to lawyers. I'm going to go with doctors. But I always think sometimes with knowing your brand and what does make you you, sometimes it's a bit like a doctor operating on themselves. You can't, you can do it, but you can't technically see all the angles right. It's your perspective is off.
Yeah. So I love this question, and I'll be open and honest and say that I don't have currently a specific framework for what those things are, but this is a really good inspiration for me to go and create that. So that's something I'm definitely going to work on. But what I do know is there's a couple of things that are really common. So we talked earlier about like hobbies, things that you enjoy doing outside of your work that you can bring those things in, right? As far as I know, bots and AI don't yet have hobbies. They don't yet take up watercolor on the side of their generative AI. They're not going bowling on the weekends with their friends from ChatGPT. That's not quite how it works. So that's a uniquely human experience you can bring in, your other hobbies and interests that you can tie in there. The other thing is to just think about what is a uniquely human thing, like the difference between you and that bot. And this is going to be different for everybody, but it could be that you move through the world physically or emotionally in a way that's different than others. I've seen so many creators recently kind of open up and talk about, as someone who has XYZ disability, or as someone who is of a certain race or religion, like how that colors their view of the world, how they move differently through the world. I am autistic, and so I've started talking about that more recently, that this impacts the way I think about things, the way I approach things. And again, as of right now, I'm not aware of diagnostic criteria for bots. having specific religions or races or ways of thinking or neurodivergence that impact their way, the way they operate, right? They're all working from the same playbook, and humans are so incredibly diverse in the way we show up in the world. And so, again, leaning into those things about yourself that are really important. And then, as we talked about, just like general life experience, you have past jobs, you have client stories you can tell, you have family vacations that were disastrous that you can, use as a metaphor, the veggie chicken nuggets, right? So just thinking about those things that make you you. But yeah, there's definitely a potential to like spiral into deep existential meltdown. Who am I? And what makes me me? That can definitely get deep, but hopefully we can keep it a little bit easy to examine by just looking at like the social and cultural things that make us distinct from not just the bots, but from people around us, because that's what's going to color our worldview and help us think differently.
So it almost sounds like you're saying, yeah, because the existential crisis was exactly what I felt. And sometimes we apply that to the brand, what is, and like brand voice it can feel like this squishy thing that we have trouble grabbing hold of. But it almost sounds like you're saying is, who are the, like the human stuff, the people around this brand, and what do they bring to the table that is unique, like you said, hobbies, interests, background, stories.
With a brand, you can lean heavy into, whoever are the faces and voices of your brand, whether that's like the person who hosts the brand podcast or, your leadership team that's out evangelizing the brand. Like you can lean into what makes them human. That's going to allow them to talk about the industry, the product, the challenge that you're solving in a different way, just based on what makes them them. But yeah, you could sort of take that same map and apply it to the brand more holistically itself, right? What makes you as a company different than the competitors? Do you have difference in values, difference in process, difference in philosophy of the way you approach this particular industry, product, category, or just the way you operate in the world? I think a lot of times we see this, especially in any sort of like people management parts of our business. So things like HR, corporate social responsibility, operations, where the peopleness of of our people kind of has the chance to shine more, and you can bring those things into the content you're creating just to kind of communicate like this is who we are holistically, and we're made up of all these amazing little particles of people that are so different from everything else that's out there.
Well, and it also seems like a theme to keep coming back to is story, that we as humans are full of stories. It does make a scary question come to mind of what happened. I mean, I'm sure I could type into the robot and tell it to tell me a story about something, and I'm just thinking, how worried will that no longer be a unique piece of what we're able to do?
So I think this is where like those human elements are what make it so different, right? Because if we asked a bot to tell us a story, it will give us a story. It'll give us a beginning, a middle, and end. It will, fulfill the basic minimum requirements of what counts as a story. Once upon a time, and they all lived happily ever after, right? They'll follow the 3-act structure or the hero's journey or whatever formulaic system they have. But again, unless we're giving it very specific prompts, relying on our own lives, that story is going to be fairly sterile, right? Because it's not going to talk about the story through the lens of, your family situation or your hobbies or, what makes your view special. And my guess is that if we had 500 people ask the AI to tell us a story with a similar prompt, they might be slightly different, but it's working from the same ingredients. Like there's not that much variance to it, right? And so if what we know is that the bots are working, I'm coming back to cooking. I'm sorry. It just is what it is.
Yes.
If we know that the bots are making cookies and all they've got is flour, eggs, and water and sugar, like they're going to all make pretty much the same cookie, the same dough that's going to come out. But if I'm coming to the table with chocolate chips and you're coming to the table with macadamia nuts, and your colleague is coming to the table with little bits of Snickers bars all crushed up, like, we're going to make much more delicious cookies. They'll all count as cookies, but ours are certainly going to be superior because we're working with different ingredients that the bots just don't have.
I love it. I've learned. I am hungry now. And I have certainly smiled a lot during this conversation. But Melanie, it is now time for me to ask you for a brand that has made you smile recently.
So I don't know if this counts. So you can tell me that it doesn't if it doesn't follow the rules. But I will say, again, here, coming from the toddler world, right? There is a children's show called Bluey that comes from Australia that my daughter is currently obsessed with. She just had a Bluey birthday party. And I am absolutely gobsmacked with the way this television show with 10-minute episodes about a dog family from Australia manages to tell some of the most deeply impactful stories about things like loss and identity and grief and inspiration and kindness. I mean, they just touch on some of the biggest, deepest, talking of existential crises, right? These huge topics in a way that parents are able to watch and feel inspired and actually enjoy watching a children's show. And the kids are none the wiser. They're just laughing. They love it. And I think that's such a special skill to be able to speak to two audiences at the same time in a really cohesive way. I'm always so impressed when I'm watching that. And I would be lying if I said that when she falls asleep, I don't keep watching sometimes. So it's definitely Bluey has been making me smile quite a bit lately.
Absolutely. We are a Bluey household as well. So got some fans of it here, and not all of them are kids, the grown-ups too. Melanie, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do? All of your culinary offerings.
So I've made it very easy for you. My website is melaniedeziel.com. So if you go ahead and go to melaniedeziel.com, you can find everything you're looking for. So that's the social stuff if you want to connect with me, information about the books and my speaking stuff. And there's a link there to the Creator Kitchen as well. But if you want to go direct to the kitchen and see what we're up to and how we're helping creators create more deep and uniquely them work, that's creatorkitchen.com.
Awesome. And we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Melanie Deziel, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thanks for letting me share my story.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.